Aloha, y'all. Welcome to the Esports Futuri E-Zine Podcast, where we chat it up with your favorite celebrities, influencers, local heroes, and people of all walks of life as we reveal the unexpected connection they have to the gaming industry. I'm your host, Chantel Boucher. Well, hello, and aloha, y'all. This is Miss Chantel Boucher here with the Esports Futuri E-Zine Podcast. And today we have somebody so exciting and so special for our very first episode, Mr. Jacob R. Miles III. He is the creator of Map Esports and Esports Futuri. He is the man, let me tell you. Thank you for coming on the show, Jacob. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Yes, it really is. Now, this guy right here, he's been such a mentor for me this past year. And I mean, I want to dig some deep in there with Mr. Jacob today and kind of get in the mind of him. But before we kind of do that, I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about who you are, where you came from. How did you get involved in the gaming industry? I mean, your stories are amazing. Well,
I'll give you the short version.
Yeah, let's do the clip notes.
Yeah, I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. There's a Millville housing projects. There's government housing. It was built back in the 40s. But so I was one of those at-risk kids, that through mentoring and family and so forth was able to rise above my circumstances and become an engineer. And then began working at General Electric Aircraft Engine Group, designing jet engines and so forth. But very quickly realized that, that was a little bit boring for me. And I know jet engines, how can that be boring? But I wanted something a little bit more exciting. And so I ended up in toys. And Kenner Toys was located in Cincinnati. So I went to work for Kenner Toys. And
can you give us some examples? I mean, they've heard of Kenner Toys. I mean, who hasn't heard of Kenner Toys?
Well, as some of the Generation Z and so forth, they probably heard of the products, but they probably don't remember
Drop some
Kenner.
of those names. Drop some of the product names so people know who Kenner was.
Well, when I arrived there as a young engineer, the Steiner brothers founded Kenner, and a couple of them were still around. But they were doing Play-Doh, Easy Bake Oven. They were doing Spirograph and Sit and Spin and Close and Play, $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman, Snoopy toothbrush, electronic toothbrush. And this is a mid-'70s, so electronic toothbrush was a big thing for kids at that time. Now, of course, Everybody got them, But so that began my career in what I call a toy and game and entertainment industry, because toys basically are the entertainment industry. They're designed to entertain children. But that's how my path led me into toys. But in toys, I found it and I said, this is it. I don't need to do anything else. I'm going to stay in this. And that led me into video games, and the toy industry kind of pioneered the video game industry in that back in the day, as the old folks say, there was ColecoVision by Coleco Toys and Television by Mattel. There was, Atari, of course. So I had some involvement in those. Nolan Bushnell, the founder of Atari, worked with us at Kenner on our electronic held games and so forth, which unbeknownst to me until I did research just a couple of years ago, the first esports event was Nolan Bushnell's event for the public in California, where he did Space Invaders at a mall and for a competition. And I think you got a Rolling Stone subscription or something like that. But nonetheless, Nolan had invited me out as a Kenner young engineer to this event, and I was at the first esports event.
That's crazy.
I really come full circle.
You didn't realize that was technically the first quote unquote esports event, right?
That had no idea, and nor did anybody else.
They didn't know it was a thing yet.
Right,
They didn't know what it was.
a thing,
There wasn't a word for it yet.
That's right. Absolutely. But that began my career in the toy industry, and obviously we did Star Wars. We've done DC Comics, Marvel Comics, starting a lineup, sports figures. But toys are entertainment, as I said before. Every toy has media behind it, whether it's a book or film or TV series and so forth. So that's pretty much what led me to today and to esports.
Okay, well, you skipped a very important part as Star Wars fans.
Absolutely.
I feel like I was just waiting for you to talk about that because, being
Star
Wars fans.
I could spend
Listen, that's for another show.
Whole show.
But it doesn't mean that you don't
Star
mention
Wars,
it. You know what I mean? Like I'm
yes.
sitting here waiting for the twinkle in my eye was starting to go because I was like, oh, he's going to get to that part now. Talk a little bit about
That's a little bit about Star Wars. Well, Star Wars, George Lucas came to Kenner. And I remember as clear as day.
I've heard of him.
The day that I was in my office, I got a call. We need you to come downstairs for a meeting. And we were located in the Kroger building in downtown Cincinnati. And so came downstairs to the meeting, and there was a gentleman there that was with Bernie Loomis, who was our president. And Bernie says, well, we're taking a look at this property. We may invest in it. And so we want to talk about it, have you guys take a look at it, see whether it's feasible, talk about how we may do some toys. And as Bernie would say, see if it's toyetic, which is a word he phrased to see if something will make a good toy, toy line. And obviously there was George Lucas, and I believe the other guy was his attorney. And they had a script. And George was looking for money, to fund the film, and hadn't been having much success, believe it or not, given what it is today.
Yeah, no kidding.
He was having a hard time getting it funded. So Kenner stepped in to support and received the toy rights for obviously the investment and upfront money and so forth. And so we sat on the floor and figured out how to do the ships, how to make them toyetic, how to make them, something that could be featured in a commercial. And that began my work with Star Wars. So I'm one of the original Kenner Star Wars engineers. And obviously today Star Wars is so huge that now we've all become part of pop culture. And has been featured in books and interviews and things of that nature. But Star Wars is forever. We coined that phrase at Kenner in 1976, I believe.
And it rings true.
And it rings true today.
To today.
Absolutely.
That is so awesome. And being such a huge part of history in the toy, gaming, and movie, I mean, it's all attached. People don't understand how the gaming industry is so connected to other industries that are out there. And it's just, it goes above and beyond. Like, I mean, it goes into education. It goes into the regular, quote unquote, entertainment world and whatnot. Now, tell me about what was it inside of you that made you decide to create MAP Esports and Esports Futuri E? How did that happen exactly?
Well, as I said, I've been in the media and entertainment industry for decades. But one of the things that, several things that I've done over the year kind of culminates into what MAP Esports is. And obviously you've got the toy side, you've got the video game side. On that toy side, when I left Kenner, I went to General Mills Toy and Entertainment Group, which ended up buying Kenner. Then I went to Tonka Toys. Then we did Sega Game Systems. I was on the team to introduce Sega Game Systems in America. And obviously a lot of video game interaction with the content people in Japan, the hardware people in Japan as well. And then the in-home electronic held games, all of that is part of that history. But as I went from Kenner to Tonka to General Mills to Sega to Hasbro. From there, became an entrepreneur. And as an entrepreneur, I developed my own toy line and cartoons and animation, but also in one of my entrepreneur endeavors, I created an online network, and I also ran a television network as well. And so MAP Esports is a culmination of all of that. And I was operating, which still operates my consulting practice, and a gentleman came in with an esports idea and wanted us to take a look at it for funding it or helping him to develop it. And we didn't end up working together. But it piqued my interest. And I said, okay, now I understand video games. I understand the events, and I need to do some research on this thing. And so I'd done a little research in prepping for him, but I went a little deeper. I called some friends of mine that I work with at Goldman Sachs and at Nielsen Media Research, and they both sent me their research on the industry. And so I combed through that in detail, in my old school fashion, writing down notes and so forth and highlighting the key points and the common points between the two research reports. And the thing that jumped out from it was both of them spoke to how far Korea was, South Korea, China, Europe, and how they were further along in developing an esports ecosystem than America was. But we had the gamers, we had the games, but we did not have the infrastructure to support the gamers and to support the fans and to support the industry. And so MAP Esports Network is that infrastructure. So it is a traditional media network, niche network, obviously, but that's why we have the podcast network, we have the film and TV, we have the events, we have the magazines and e-zines, and we have the mentor gaming centers, which operate as affiliates that will obviously will be broadcasting and syndicating our content through those. And then, of course, we got our league to develop content around players focused on more on the amateur players.
No, yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's important that people know that you're doing something that has never been done before. So I always get people coming up to me, especially like they don't know exactly my involvement with the company 100%. Everybody will learn later. But because it's the first of its kind, everybody's like, well, what's it like? Is it like this? Is it like that? And you're like, yeah, but it's also like this. And it's also like this other company. And so there's not really a company to compare us to. And I think that's just the cool part of it. I mean, we're revolutionizing the gaming and esports industry. And what I love about you is your heart the most with it and the passion that you have for the people, because without the people, we wouldn't have this industry. So why don't you speak to that a little bit about kind of what we're doing for the communities and the vision that you had going into this and setting this up?
Well, when you talk about a company, the most important part of a company is the people, is the people inside the company. That's the most important thing. I will hire a good, talented, hardworking person and train them and help them, as opposed to the smartest and most talented person who has a bad attitude or has a chip on their shoulder or can't get along with folks, because that's just disrupts your organization.
Cut, folks. I made the cut.
So that's very important. The other side of the business is obviously your customers or your audience and so forth. And we always focus on the masses. We're not focused on a niche community. Obviously, we're going to support the gamers, support the industry, celebrate them, feature them, but we look at the disadvantaged community. At being an at-risk kid coming out of those communities, at our core is support, and how do we help others get lifted out of their circumstances and rise above those circumstances. So throughout our entire network infrastructure, we have built in STEM and STEAM opportunities for disadvantaged youth. And we work with nonprofits and churches and so forth to gain access to those communities and to bring another dimension to them so that they are aware of the opportunities that are available in the media and entertainment business, and in particular, video games, esports, and so forth. So that's very, very important to us, and we couldn't be more excited about it.
Yeah, I know. The future is so bright with this. And speaking of future, what do you see for the future in this next upcoming year? Because, listen, this past year in 2020 was a little bit crazy. Why don't you speak to that a little bit and then tell me what you see for the future in 2021? Well,
no question, COVID has created a year in 2020 that we'll all remember, that we'll all will look back on and say, I survived it, I made it through. But I also think that it has provided an opportunity for everyone to reflect on what is really important. And what is really important is family, is friends. It is, again, in a company, your coworkers, because that's an extension of your family. At least that's how I see it. And then when you look toward the future, obviously you look toward, when we get past this thing, wow, it's going to be an explosion of activity because, give you an analogy, I lived in Minneapolis for over a decade. And as you know, Minneapolis has long winters.
Yep.
So, and when I say long winters, they are winters where I've lived there when there was 60 degree below zero, and I'm not talking wind chill.
What?
60 degrees below
That's not
zero.
for me.
I mean, the house is cracking and making noises. I called 911, said there's something going on, and they said that's just your house crackling because of the temperature changes. But very, very cold. So you get these long winters. When those winters are over, people come out and
they're ready to go.
They're ready to go. And they have a name for it up there. I don't remember what it is, but they have a name for it. And COVID is like a long winter. And so we're going to come out of that, and I think you're going to see just a flurry of activity and creativity that is going to bode well for the future. So with esports, and the future of esports, esports is much, much bigger than video games. We all know that every video game is not an esport or adaptable to esport.
And vice versa.
And vice versa. So esports is this unique thing. But there is a whole ecosystem around esports. And when most people talk about it, esports ecosystem, they talk about the business. They talk about the business ecosystem. Well, there's also a consumer ecosystem around esports. And that consumer ecosystem is things like K-pop, J-pop, hip-hop, cosplay, Comic-Cons and hackathons.
Oh, yeah. Well, speaking of things like a Comic-Con, I know because Map Esports, we're going to be very big into events as well, too. Why don't you give people a little bit of highlights and some ideas of what they can expect when the events start happening?
Well, and that is our future. When we started the company, events were in the forefront.
And that's both just a premise. It's both online and physical events.
And physical events.
Yes.
But the physical events were in the forefront because they were booming in esports, as everyone knows. And then we had to pivot with COVID. And then so we moved the more virtual things forward and then pushed the events. Right now, we've got them sort of pushed out to the second half of 2021. But we're going to have events from the community level to working with cities and nonprofits, with parents for little robotic competitions, robotic activities, coding activities and competitions, esports activities and competitions, and as well as media, entertainment, the careers and what's behind those things. Because when you look at the kids, I remember going to a school and speaking at this school to kids and telling them about toys and video games and so forth, and Star Wars and Care Bears and Spider-Man, all the stuff that I've worked on. And then a kid's hand went up, cute little kid, and just as innocently and serious, he says, "You mean I could get a job in toys?"
Yeah, they don't realize that's a whole business right there. That toy they don't put those because their imagination is just so inundated with
the toy.
Right.
And so and the rest of the kids, really? It's like a light went on, and the kids, and then it made me think about it, and the teacher's not going to talk about toys. That's the last thing a teacher want to talk about in the classroom is toys to a kid. There is no degree you can go to a college and get in toys. So the career counselors aren't going to talk about toys, So there's no one to talk about those types of industries to those kids. So they have no idea what are the jobs, what are the classes, what are the things that could lead them to working on sneakers. Yeah. Working on video games, working on toys.
The stuff that they're naturally passionate about.
Exactly. So that's the part that we bring to our activities, our events, to bring that exposure to the kids, not only in them playing and participating, but also in a curriculum as well that gets them more involved. So we're not trying to replace teachers and our parents or anything, but we are trying to, again, expose them. Because as a young kid in the projects, everything was in the projects. School was in the projects, stores in the projects. All you see is projects, So that awareness becomes critical. You can't want it, you can't dream it
if you don't know.
If you don't know. Yeah. If you can't envision it. So we want to help them to be able to envision it. And as we go forward with the future of esports and the future of video gaming and so forth, what we're going to see is life enter the game. We're going to see, we see it now with concerts inside video games. We were just talking about a partner we're negotiating with whereby we can put advertising inside video games. We're going to see...
Like product placement, so to speak?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, he's eating a Pizza Hut pizza.
So you're going to be able to see that anything you can do in real life, you're going to be able to put inside that video game. So if you've seen the movie Minority Report.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's been a while.
Minority Report, it's been around a long time.
Yeah.
But everything in that movie, Spielberg had insisted that nothing goes in this movie that is not doable today. So everything in that movie is doable today. Now it wasn't economically feasible to do it.
It was possible, but it wasn't. Yes, right. Exactly. The cost of doing it didn't add up.
It's a good movie to see where we could be going.
Yes.
And so I think virtual reality is going to play a big part in the future of esports.
Yes.
In the future of video games. I saw one example of that was playing dodgeball. And I saw these people playing dodgeball, and this is obviously in a test lab. This was it's not a real product at this point. But and they were literally throwing an imaginary ball. And the people were moving out of the way of the ball, and then the computers and the angles could catch the trajectory based upon your arm speed, and so forth. And then the people, how fast they move, and then say, nope, you'd be hit. Boom, you're hit. And so forth. But that type of thing can become a sport. And so I think as we look forward to the Olympics and things of that nature, you'll see stuff coming up in the Olympics that will end up being esports for future as
More
well.
digitized,
You know,
if you will.
so it's going to be a lot of fun and very exciting. So we're really at the beginning of esports, and we're very excited to be the network for esports. So we're the first esports podcast network, and we are the first full service esports network. So we look forward to it. We look forward to embracing the future and leading the future forward.
That's right. That is right. And you know, we have an amazing team behind us too as well that you've put together and that you've hand selected all these amazing people to do these things. And I'm very grateful to be a part of that. Let me tell you, this is going down in history in my books. I mean, I suddenly became somewhat cool to my 17-year-old. Not completely, but you know what? That's how that goes with that age. But speaking, I want to backtrack just a little bit more about when you were talking about, you know, growing up in the projects and being able to be a source of education for those kids. I want you to dig a little bit more deeper into that too as well, and maybe tell us a story about your age and something that was pivotal for you when you realized that you could dream bigger. When was that moment for you when you were like, you know, like you said, growing up in the projects? Was there a specific moment in time where you're like, you know what? Like my thinking is like different than everybody else, or you recognize something different about yourself, or you woke up somehow to see what possibilities were?
Well, you know, my earliest memory of that I think impacted me greatly, and it's amazing that I didn't remember it for years. You know, it was always there, and I guess in the back of my mind. But until I started writing a book called My American Toy Story that's coming out next year, and it forced me to think about a lot of things. It brought a lot of stuff forward. But as a kid, one of the things my mother did day work. So she, you know, cleaned, as a kid from the projects, she cleaned rich people's houses. She worked for several families in Cincinnati and outside Cincinnati. And one of the families was the Brauns, which Bob Braun is a TV personality in Cincinnati. The Clooneys, which is Nick Clooney, dad. You know, the Clooney family, and then the guy that their manager, which is where she started. I think their last name was Terrells, the Terrells. So sometimes she would take me with her to work because we didn't have a babysitter or anything like that. Sure. And she'd take me with her to work. And she'd be cleaning the ovens and cleaning the floors and so forth. And I'd be, you know, kind of wandering around a little bit, you know. And so I wandered into Mr. Terrell's office one day, and he's sitting behind the desk, and I just kind of walked in and goes, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm working." And I said, "You're not working. My mama working. You know, you sitting behind a desk. You're not working." You know. Yeah. He laughed and went, "Well, yes, this is a different kind of work." And I said, "Well, what kind of work is that?" You know, and he says, "Well, you know," and he started to tell me. And by this time, my mom realized I'm in there disturbing him, so she's coming to get me and drag me out. And he says, "No, let him stay. Let him stay. Yeah. You know, we're having a good conversation." Yeah. So he says, "Well, let me tell you the kind of work I do." He said, "I'm in media and entertainment. We have publications. I manage, you know, folks on TV, and I said, well, what does that mean?" He said, "Well," and he kind of showed me the kind of stuff he was doing. And obviously computers weren't as big, so it was pretty much ledgers and spreadsheets and so forth. And I said, well, I want to do this kind of work, and so anyway, he would talk to me about it. Then we would leave, and he'd ask my mom, well, we didn't finish. Could you bring him back next time? And so that was my first.
Cool dude.
That was my first introduction to the media and entertainment industry. And I forgot about that for years. And I think it's always been in my subconscious. And then when I was working on the book, I went,
oh, that's
okay.
a seed. That was a seed.
That
in
was
my
a
life.
seed. That was that exposure, and so forth. So when I look at and think about kids in poverty and in different communities, I look at the work the nonprofits are doing, and for the most part, the nonprofits are doing good work. And they want to make sure that they're fed, so they give them food. They want to make sure they have health care, so they try and give them services there. And it's primarily social services. Yeah. But all of it is done, and it sustains them where they are.
Yeah.
It's nothing to lift them and advance them out of there.
Yes.
Exactly.
100%. And I think also too, the older way of mentality was they were like, oh, this is how the system is. And so I can advance. Like they're already telling themselves they can't do something that they truly haven't even tried because they weren't given.
They're not aware of it.
They're not given the tools, and those words haven't been spoken into their hearts and their minds yet at that point. And I think that you're a great example of showing people that there is no bounds and there's no excuse. You had all the same quote unquote excuses, or I don't want to say just excuses because that would allude that would allude something negative. But I just mean the reasons. Right? All the reasons that they can kind of come up with why they can't advance or can't do something. So you're definitely somebody who's definitely made it and has accomplished like so much great things, like from several lifetimes in one lifetime you have lived. Now, so the next thing I was going to bring up, which is a great segue, is your book that you're coming out with anyways. So talk to us a little bit about your book. Like, obviously, because look at everything you've gone through, you should write a book. That's a thing for sure. But how did you know now was the time? Because I feel like even from my own life, I know that I meant to write a book one day. That's another show. And I know that I have to get further along in life before I kind of do it. What made you know that this was the time for that?
Well, when I had a company called Cultural Exchange Entertainment, and we did toys that promote, cultures getting along and nonviolence and so forth. And we had a lot of success with that company, and I ended up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, front page of USA Today, all this stuff, all kinds of awards and so forth. And my PR firm at that time just kept pushing me to, you got to write a book. You got to get this story out. You got to get it out. And I just didn't feel it was right time. Yeah. And I ended up selling that company, and then going into the internet and TV and film and then on to obviously where we are today. But I got contacted by about 5 different people who were writing books, So the editor of Black Enterprise magazine, he calls me and he wrote a chapter on me in his book. Forever Barbie, about the history of Barbie. They called me and did a thing on me in their book. Several motivational speakers called and so I said, well, wait a minute. If everybody doing and selling books with my stuff, and I need to have my own book, So that led me about a year ago to start that process, and we're finally complete. It's called My American Toy Story, and we're looking for to probably release it around Toy Fair whenever we can go back and do Toy Fair.
Toy Fair's in New York, isn't it?
Toy Fair's in New York, usually in February. Obviously, it won't be in February this year. Right now, it's tentatively scheduled for May.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, we're going to have to go there anyway.
yeah. Oh, I've
That's
gone.
my birthday month.
Well, I've gone to Toy Fair probably for over 20 years.
Yeah, I know. Toy Fair is so cool, right? And how are we able to get into Toy Fair too?
No, it's
that's
not
just for physical product,
not
right?
for consumers. It's for the trade.
Yes, for the
but
trade. Yes,
you can because
I can.
You can go in under me. But
well, hey,
so
don't tell anybody. Well, it's just been so awesome having you on the show today, and I'm so excited to be a part of your dream. Your dream has now become my dream. And I never thought I would ever say that about anything because I've been such an entrepreneur. And so it's not that I'm like prideful and I just want it to be my own deal or my own idea. No, it's just I'm naturally that way. And it's just so cool to be a part of a situation that I never thought I could say that, where somebody else's dream then becomes my dream. And I'm here to support you. All of us here at the network are here to support you. And I'm just looking forward to the future. It's going to be awesome.
I am too, and like I said, if I could not do it without my team, and I am blessed to have them, and everybody on my team has a story.
Absolutely.
And I am honored to be part of their story. You know what I mean? And so the future is exciting. The future is not only exciting for us, the future is exciting for everyone. And that's the way you have to look at it. Being positive is critically important. How you look at the world is critically important. Of course, there's problems, and there's always going to be problems, but problems are opportunities. And as we encounter them, as long as we communicate, have compassion, and learn, we can overcome those problems. So, again, thank you for being part of the team.
Absolutely.
I want to thank your audience for supporting us and being part of this journey with us. You are critical to our success, and we're blessed to have you as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jacob. Mr. Jacob R. Miles, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming on the show. He'll be back one of these years, too. Again, he's a very busy man. So, again, thank you for coming on. And thanks to everyone watching the Esports Futuri E-Zine Podcast with Miss Chantel Boucher. Until next time, aloha, y'all. Thanks for listening to the Esports Futuri E-Zine Podcast. This podcast is part of the Esports Futuri Podcast Network and produced by Innovation Media Enterprises. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast channel and leave us a review.